Hi, my name is Jessica, and I'm here today to talk to you about cremation and give you a little bit more information and hopefully make the whole idea of cremation not as frightening. Cremation is an alternative to full body burial. Most of the time, people choose cremation for three reasons. One, there are more options that come along with cremation. Two, it is more earth friendly, or they want to be they don't want to be laid to rest somewhere permanently where they don't necessarily have roots if they have traveled their whole life or retired somewhere else. And the third, and probably the most important, is that it's more cost effective. In fact, in 2014, the national average for cremation was about 47%. And here in Western Washington, particularly the peninsula, we're looking at an 85% cremation rate. A lot of that is because we're more of a retirement community and people don't want to be laid to rest in a cemetery where they don't have a history or where their family is not located. The cremation process is a two-step process. The first begins to happen at the funeral home. Washington state law says that everybody who's cremated has to be placed in a fully enclosed and rigid bottom container. And I'm going to show you some of those options. This is the basic one that meets that requirement. It has a wood bottom and a cardboard top, so it's fully enclosed. And this is the most popular choice, especially for those people who are choosing direct cremation, because they don't have a viewing, they don't have services, so this meets the requirement and fills the need for most families. Some other options for families who are choosing to have a viewing before cremation would be something similar to this. It is a container that has a interior lining in it, and the person who's passed away can be placed in this for viewing or for visitation. Family can spend some time with them, and then when they're finished, the container actually closes up, and this whole unit is cremated with the individual. There are some other options that are a little fancier for those who want something that looks a little nicer, and these also can be cremated with the individual. There's also an option with a full traditional casket with all of the bells and whistles per se, but it is designed, the exterior of the casket is designed as a rental unit that is reused, and there's an insert put inside it that might look similar to this, and this is what what comes out of the casket, and this part with the individual is what is cremated. Washington state law says that all legal next of kin have to sign off on authorization for the cremation process, and embalming is not required for cremation. So most people choose not to have embalming. They usually will use refrigeration at the funeral home before cremation takes place. Any battery-operated device such as pacemakers or defibrillators have to be removed before cremation, and that usually is done by the embalmer at the funeral home. They also need to excuse me. They also need to remove any kind of silicone implants, and this would include breast implants because those actually cause problems during the cremation process. So the cremation process, this has all been preparation for it. The first step is the individual in their cremation container is transferred to the crematory. Some funeral homes have their own crematory. Some actually use a third party, which means they acquire those services with a crematory they do not own. And so that whole unit that person is in is placed into the crematory. And or it's also called a retort. The temperatures on that go from about 1400 to 1800, and the cremation process, which is the actual incineration process, where that container and the individual in it are exposed to open heat and flame, that can take about 2 to 2.5 hours, sometimes a little bit longer, depending on the size of the individual. After that process is completed, then there's a cool down time, and then the remains of that person are then put into a processor, and they're they're kind of processed or ground up per se, where they're all uniform in size. So any of the larger remnants are going to be processed down to a smaller size. And this is actually very effective and very, very helpful for those families who wish to scatter. It makes it easier for them to do that. Excuse me. Like I said, there are a lot of options that cremation offers. One of them, you hear a lot of times, people will go put their loved one on the mantle. And you'll see behind me that there's quite a few urns to choose from. And these vase urns here are often the ones that are chosen by families that they keep at home on the mantle. So something like this would be a choice for that because it's quite decorative. Some of them do offer engraving, so families choose that sometimes as well. Some of the other options would be keepsakes. And some of the keepsakes I'm going to show you, there's actually quite a bit of options when it comes to that. And that is the really the most popular part of cremation, I think. When I talk about keepsake urns, you could have something. This is similar to the vase urn, but it's a much smaller size. There's also keepsakes that may be specific, like this one is actually shaped like an acorn, so that's kind of nice. And this one is actually, they all hold cremated remains. This one is shaped like a star. Other options may include glass pendants, where the cremated remains are actually placed in a keepsake. This is blown glass, and the cremains are placed in there as well. And there's also a globe, and you can, depending on what your funeral home in your area offers, you can have something like that. It kind of lights up at night. It's kind of nice. And this one is the new and exciting one. This actually is made at the Glass Museum in Tacoma, and so families can actually go and watch this be made. Other options may be, more specific. This is actually a little bird, kind of cute. And then this is a small vase urn with some birds on it, and then this top here is a candle holder. So sometimes families like to, on their loved one's birthday or a holiday, or just whenever, they like to light a candle in their memory. And so that's something that is kind of popular. We also have jewelry. So this is, let's see if you can see this well, it's a silver heart. This also holds cremated remains. You can get rings, bracelets. This is a ring. And then this is another keepsake necklace that actually has a photo engraved on it. So this is quite popular as well. Some of the other options that could be for cremation are scattering. And a lot of times you can bring a container in from home. Don't ever feel like you're pressured from the funeral home to buy an urn from them. If your dad was a fisherman, you can bring in his fishing box and have him placed in that, and actually take that out to the river or on the boat or whatever, and have him scattered from there. There's also specific urns this one is biodegradable, and it's made for scattering. Your loved one's just placed inside, and it's easy to scatter. This one is actually designed for water scattering, specifically in the ocean. The cremated remains are placed inside, and it's made of kind of dirt and clay, and it's heavy, so it will drop to the bottom, and then as it dissolves, the cremains are scattered inside there as well. A more permanent option would be placement in a cemetery. And most cemeteries have regulations what you can and cannot place in their cemeteries. This is, most of them will require a vault. And in this case, it would be something like this, where the lid comes off, and inside there is where the urn would go. And then this whole thing would be placed in the ground for ground burial. So if this vase were going to have your loved one in it, and then this would go into the ground, and then the vault would be closed up, and then that would be buried, and it would meet the requirements. There's also some urn vaults that you can get, such as this. They're actually made of stone, and they suit the purpose of both urn and vault. So these are popular for people who are being placed in the ground burial. There's also, options at the cemetery where you can get a niche, which is the little place on the wall, or sometimes there's buildings you can go inside and there's little places where they have urns. A lot of them are decorative if they're a glass front niche. Most important is that you want to make sure you are getting an urn that will fit in the space where you're going to put it. So there's a lot of options in regards to cremation, and I hope that this has informed you a little bit more. And go ahead and email me if you have any questions. Thanks.